Afternoon.
Hi, Miss
Yeah.
Jasenia.
I think we might.
Oh, and Isabel is here. Hola, Isabel.
Hola. Hola, Nayamin.
¿Cómo está?
Bien, bien. ¿Y tú?
Bien, gracias. Ahorita vamos a dar un reporte de lo que fue esta Yesenia a investigar de los lugares donde quiere que se planten los árboles.
Oh, ok.
Okay.
Está bien. Vamos a ver.
Perfect. And Lisa is here. I know Ivanka is here, and I also heard from Kim she was joining. For the sake of time, maybe we can start with introductions, Yesenia, and then they, as people can get to join, they chime in. Oh, I'm already running the meeting. So is that okay? That for Yesenia to be the facilitator of the meeting, I'll be the note taker.
Of course. That's awesome. And we've got Cass on our side taking notes too, Naomi.
Oh, okay, then I'll let her take the notes.
Thanks, Cass. And yeah, I don't think anybody else is coming. Aaron, are you expecting anybody else? We got who you need?
No, I think that's it.
All right, let's roll. And we are recording the meeting so that we can post it later. If anybody else is interested on the other meetings page in the Fresno area.
And I know before we get going, I know that Mona has limited time. I wanted her to be able to speak a little bit on this. So whatever her introduction, I want to like interrupt and get Mona to speak before we kind of get going there, because I know she has to kind of get in and out this evening faster.
About 20 to 22 minutes after the hour. I just need
Yeah.
to vacate. Okay,
And
thank you.
what was your, Aaron, just to clarify, what in which of the agenda items was were you asking Mona to chime in?
Well, what I wanted to just talk about, just about kind of how they go about doing a vegetative barrier is what I want to talk about. Maybe these are my next meeting, but I want to talk about the process and how long it takes to do these things. I really want to just, so we feel understand that is what I want to talk about here.
Yeah, but I think it's super important, but I think you saw the agenda. I think what we are going to discuss today, because I think talking about that right now is kind of putting in my opinion, the cart before the horse. We need to have finalized the project that you have submitted to CARB and do some revisions. So I think once we have that finalized, then we can start going in depth about the specifics of more like the technical issues with the the vegetative barriers and all that.
Yeah, and that'll be part of the review of the plan.
Right. And I will tell you that I've got this down to probably less than a minute, just sort of giving a recap of what the process takes. So that way it's nothing new that you haven't heard, Nayamin, but it's just to inform people of the reality of that sort of the process.
Yep, sounds good. So Yesenia, take it away.
All right, welcome everyone to the Vegetative Barrier Subcommittee meeting. My name is Yesenia and I'm working with CSC, JN, and Nayamin at Climate Action Corps. And I will popcorn it off to Heather.
Hello, everyone. And I'm seeing a lot of the same faces. This is good. I am Heather Hanks. Go ahead, Naomi.
Make a suggestion, just because we have just 1 hour and there's a lot of topics that we need to discuss, and Mona needs to leave. Maybe we can do what we do with the steering committee. We all put our names in the chat. I think we all know each other, and that way we can jump to the first agenda item.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Sorry, Jason, I'm just giving you more time so we are not rushing it afterwards.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so the first agenda item for today is to discuss the proposal plan that CARB has sent to us, the draft, and a suggestion for the proposal is that we get a detailed list of the scoring criteria, which is referred in the document, but it's not exactly included. And Naomi, can you link that?
Yeah, I will link it right now. I just wanted to say that, just a clarification. So that the proposal was written by the Air District, submitted to CARB. CARB gave comments, and now it's back at the Air District's corner.
Yes.
So what I would like to suggest is that Aaron walks us through the main elements of that proposal. And then we open it up for discussion of the reactions from the steering committee. So Aaron, did you prepare anything, or just going to explain verbally?
No, I have the comments from ARB in the first draft, because we had the first draft submitted to ARB. They had some comments, and the comments are, a lot of them were just very routine, as I changed some words here and there. It really didn't affect the main part of it. We went back though, and the committee wanted an RFP in the plan, so that got adjusted. But I'll go back even a step further. Is that something Yesenia said, is that the scoring criteria is not in the plan. The scoring criteria will be developed by the subcommittee during the RFP process to find out what they want, because we don't want to get locked in. You don't want locked in criteria in the plan, then not be able to adjust it. So the criteria will come from the subcommittee to vote on and where the barriers would be at, and they kind of decide what they want. But it's not part of the actual plan. It'd be part of the RFP, and the scoring criteria actually in the RFP itself. So I want to clear that up essentially. So that was basically the main thing we changed inside the plan. There were some things also that they had, just like some wording things, like they wanted us to verify that this was approved in the SERP, and just define a little better, as they wanted to define it better from the SERP to this plan. So that was added to the plan as well. And you can look on our website, and I think they put the link on there as well. I think it's actually been translated as well. And also talk about just the budget as far as, yes, go ahead.
It's in chat. Just wanted to let you know, Aaron, everyone,
Yeah,
it's in chat, both English and Spanish link.
Perfect. And then we also talked about like just funding, like the funding would pay for, the budget to identify the project, the community specific needs, the potential, like that kind of like, because what it takes where you decide you want the barriers at, then you have to have a mechanism, which in this case probably Tree Fresno, that also has a sub award to Sonoma Technologies to decide if it's doable or not. So they want to make very clear that that's part of the process and part of the funds to pay for something like this, is that analysis. So that got put into the plan as well. Is the study, and that actually is in the plan as an allowable cost.
So maybe that's where Mona explains to us how you guys do it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Sure. Now, I mean, and we've talked about this before, and I think you understand that there's the complexity of a vegetative barrier project from an urban greening project. And I love and we're coming to the starting point from this community input from the map that was created. And I really like the concept of the community, the steering committee participating in where that they envision vegetative barriers to go. So at Tree Fresno, what we would do is we would first look at who owns the property. So property ownership. This whole process, in our experience, has been taken from beginning to actually getting the property planted. It takes about a year. So, and this is if you're working with City of Fresno, Caltrans. Caltrans has taken a couple of years. So again, it depends on who manages the property and our development of an engagement letter with them, which eventually basically evolves into an MOU. Because obviously when we plant trees and we install irrigation to support those trees, which is how we do it, we need to look at long-term care and support of both the trees and irrigation. So we, first, the property ownership engagement letter eventually evolves into an MOU. And then we take the proposed project areas to Sonoma Tech, who I would say when you're talking about a scoring criteria, that they probably use they're using scientific evidence to assure us that the air quality will likely be it'll be improved by the presence of a barrier versus that the air quality may not be improved. So we make sure that we go through that process, them looking at basically a tree plan or the actual sort of Google Maps of the property before we go to a landscape architect to draw up the design of both the tree plan and the irrigation plan. And we do that for all of our projects. So moving on beyond Sonoma Tech, we then engage a landscape contractor for the installation of the irrigation and planting. We at minimum need that expertise. And again, we always plant with irrigation. I'm not sure what is supported by AB 617, but I know through CAL FIRE and the experience planting in this region that for the most part, you don't want to plant a project without supporting irrigation. So definitely, that's basically the process, and that takes usually at minimum, like I said, 1 year. And I'll give you an example. This morning, I was on the phone with Sonoma Tech. We were on for an hour and we were discussing 4 or 5 different projects where we're at different stages and deciding when part of our projects with them is actually testing air quality in a basically before vegetative barrier and after vegetative barrier setting. So that is also something that's part of our project, which I'm not sure will be part of this one. I think that you can actually, in my opinion, and I would check this with a verified resource, and I'm sure the Air Resources Board would be good for that, or also Sonoma Tech, that we could build vegetative barriers in areas where it's likely to improve the air quality, perhaps without having to have a lot of air quality monitoring research support technically, which sometimes slows the process down a little bit. So does that help?
Yeah, and I would just say that, definitely I see how you have been working with Sonoma Technology, and I'm very familiar with the very first step that they got in partnership with you to do that monitoring of effectiveness of installing those barriers. But I would say that we're talking about different things where I would support the idea of having the tech expertise needed in the design of the project, as far as having them come all the way from Sonoma to do air monitoring when you guys have the experts in the room, right? You have the air district, for goodness sake, with all these, fancy monitors that they have. I think that piece can be and should be done by them.
Sure.
We don't need to rely on the expertise of Sonoma Technology. So that would be my opinion about that.
And I think we're agreeing there. They absolutely bring expertise to the project we have, and it's built in to that SEP. But there's an opportunity.
Oh, she's on her phone. I think she got cut off there, so maybe she'll come back. Maybe not. Okay, maybe that's in a moment for the night, I guess.
Yesenia, so you can continue giving the floor to the people who are on queue. I see Lisa's hand.
Lisa, if you'd like to unmute.
Hold on for a minute. My dog has decided to start barking incredibly loud. So you need to stop. I'm on him. Anyhow, so we're looking at doing individual contract with Tree Fresno to do a bulk of the planting, depending upon who comes and asks for money. Because I've done grants before where, like, say, for example, like a bus, a 16-passenger bus. And the people that got granted the bus would go to this one company for implementation and to obtain this bus, and it basically streamlined everything. Is that the model that you're setting up?
Well, I mean, obviously Tree Fresno has experience to do this sort of thing, right? And so I think me personally, my thought is, and I could be wrong here, or your idea is, is that where do you think the barriers should be put up from a committee? Like, hey, we'd like to really put them in these areas, right? And then out of that, say you choose 6 areas. And my thought is that, well, all 6 areas might not be doable, right? Because of certain issues and land and whatever might have you. So they do they take all 6, or they say it's 5, and they do the study on it, say, well, theoretically, we can, based on everything we have here, we can do 3 of them. Based upon Sonoma Tech looking at it, through Tree Fresno, the contract Tree Fresno look at it, and then essentially that starts a process to install 3 barriers at hopefully 3 different locations or what have you, right? As through a committee, they decide. That is kind of the thought here, is that, yeah, the committee comes together and decides where they want the barriers, and then you go through this process to verify that it can be done in those areas, because sometimes things are running a roadblock, it just can't be done there because of Caltrans, the setback requirements or the height requirements or whatever have you. So yeah, yes. To answer your question in short, Lisa, the simple answer is yes, but I think there's more to that, where the committee really has a say-so on where they're truly located at.
And what about the mom and pop that want a couple of trees to help them with
But
their?
remember, Lisa, that we're talking about 2 separate items in the SERP. The vegetative barriers is one, the urban forestry or urban greening strategy is a separate one. And,
Okay.
Urban greening falls more into that category that you are describing of, trees that don't necessarily meet all these technical requirements of creating this barricade. And I think that is important to maybe focus the conversation in a little bit in that, because a lot of what this proposal is saying is that, for example, if you read the very first pages, this funding, the way that is designed right now, would only allow applications from either city, county, nonprofits, or private companies. It doesn't include nowhere individuals, like what you're saying, Lisa. So that's my first question that I have. Why? And I would say, so can we discuss the idea of having a pocket of money available for individuals, even if we do have to put a commitment, like they have to maintain the tree, I don't know, but I would like to see that is something that is considered by this committee. The second thing that I would like to bring to you guys' attention is the fact that, and remember, all of you that were part of developing the SERP, we didn't see this SERP with all the details until it was already published and taken to a vote to the board. So the fact that they say that in that SERP, it says that it's matching. So first we have to look for the money, and then the air district is going to put that money. That was surprising to me, and that was something I'm totally in disagreement with. And I would like to propose for this committee that we reconsider that. I think we have under the resolution that CARB approved in February of last year, it gave the steering committee the facility, or I don't know what word to use, to recommend changes or reallocation in funding. So I think that this particular aspect falls within that, so we can all recommend that it's not a match. Yes, it's a match, but that we start with the money that we already have. So the Air District 8617 put forth the 100,000 or whatever, I can't remember the amount is right now, and then we continue. And I'm not saying looking for matching is not possible and should be done, especially after the May revise that we heard last week, but there's going to be a lot of money for the type of projects. But I think that it's a waste opportunity to first, look for that money when we have money that could be just for this, especially considering that this was a very important priority for residents. So that's where I am putting that at the, for discussion of this committee.
Ivanka, if you'd like to unmute.
Yeah, Naimeen, you're saying exactly the thoughts that I wanted to make regarding that, the matching issue, the right for us as a CSC to go back in there and look at the funds, especially knowing that we had funds available from the locomotive that still needs to be discussed and reallocated. There's an opportunity there. This shouldn't be a proposal that waits until that matching period of something arriving, even though we did just find out about what the state revise is. The other concern that I have, and this is not in any way to insult or be negative on all that Sonoma Tech can bring to the table, but when Fresno, Sonoma Tech work together, and the more contracts that's out there, I agree with what Nyameen says. We have the expertise in the air district. At some point, what is the limitation on what we're expecting from Sonoma Tech? Because how much of these funds could get lost in the bureaucracy of paying the contract versus actually the money that goes to the ground on putting the vegetative barrier in? And one of the phrases that everybody loves to throw around is what's economically feasible after you spend all this money on paper. So I just, that is a concern of mine as well, that needs to stay in focus of, don't double up the actions. If we have air district expertise that could already, with all of the monitoring that we do have in place, be able to see connecting the data that we already see from the air monitors, that the data that's being collected of where our high pollution points are, and connecting that to the priority areas that the community has stated needs barriers. Those two pieces of data and information does not need to be repeated by Sonoma Tech, as an example of what I'm talking about.
Am I able to say something before I have to? This is Mona. I'm sorry, I dropped off earlier.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Yes, because I was in support of that concept. What I would, in an ideal world for me, it would be building vegetative barriers without too much input from a company like Sonoma Tech. I think we can build the barriers, we can build more of them, as long as we have sign off with some scientific expertise, and that could be by the air district, that it's going to make things better than worse. So I just wanted to say that before I had to log off. Sorry about it, my phone got too hot.
I think one of the key things too, as long as the barrier follows the guidance from the EPA guidance document, I think we'd be, be okay with that, I think.
Yes, I agree. You guys sign that off.
Yeah, I mean, the height of it, the thickness of it, as long as it meets those specs, I think we would be okay with that.
Excellent. In agreement.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is a
Thank
work in
you.
progress. So we're all trying to figure this thing out, I think, and we all want to make sure we do it correctly, right? That way, in the end, you don't want it to disappear in 3 years because the maintenance isn't there, the water's not there. So, the trees die. You want to make sure you have a plan to replant them if one dies out of it, or there's certain things as you learn about this. You just don't want to make it pretty the first year. You want to be very pretty 10 years from now, right? So. And it's all about, as you build a house, it's all about the foundation. And we've got to build it correctly and make sure it's done right. That way we secure it and it's there for a long period of time, way past hopefully our lives. It's still sitting there getting bigger and growing, right? So.
Thank you, Mona, for sharing.
Yes, thank you, Mona. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I see Lisa.
Thank you, and I'm happy to talk about it.
Thank you.
I have a real quick question. We're dealing with $100,000, correct? About more or less, how much are we dealing with?
Well, I believe in the SERP is $1 million.
Million.
$1 million.
Yeah, that was my mistake. I threw in the wrong number. I was missing a 0.
Yeah, big 0.
Okay. Because I was going to say 100,000 is nothing. Okay, so my question then becomes, what is the percentages of breakdown? For example, what is the percentage of actually purchasing an installation of trees? What is the breakdown of administrative costs, for example, Sonoma? And what is the breakdown of grant administration for the life of this project? Because we should be able to know now, what are those breakdowns? What is their estimated costs?
Well, I don't think we're going to know that yet. That's what we have to figure out in the next steps is as you get a bid during the RP process, then you would know how they would break those costs down in the bid process.
And I want to bring us back to my point about the money, you know, because we're already splitting money, that money that we don't have, because the way is what was worded in the SERP and the way the proposal that we're discussing right now is establishing is that we first need to go and find ourselves $1 million for the air district to give us another $1 million. Then the pot of money will be 2 million. But what I'm asking here from this committee, and I already saw Genevieve's comment in the chat, is that she is in agreement with what Ivanka and I expressed, as far as why don't we say that we're going to use $1 million that we already have from maybe the locomotive or whatever the other pot of money we have, use it, and we still find match grants or other funding sources, but that we're not doing the opposite, that we're first waiting for the money and then the air district gives the match. We put first the $1 million and then we look for the match. So I don't know what the others think about that.
I actually like that. And I also like the breakdown of anything more than 25% for grant administration, including testing, is way too much. So I like 75% for actual trees, materials, building things, and then 25% for administrative cost and grant oversight. Because I think if we hit that or we come very close to that, then this is a success. Because I do not want to see lopsided where there's so much money spent on testing and grant administration that we get one tree for $1 million.
Well,
So,
I think what you're doing, I think you're mentioning the criteria that would go into the RFP, right? I mean, that would be your document in the RFP. That would be your, that's why I didn't want it to write actually in the plan to ARB, because it's still being evaluated what you guys would want, right? That's essentially your list of items in the RFP that you'd want from the contractor.
yeah, and I've done $1 million worth of contracts too for grant administration. So it's typically a 75 to 80, 20 to 25 split. So, and that's basically across the board on most things. So.
All right, so it sounds like that's what we need next, Aaron. We need to identify the parameters of the specifics to the RFP. One other thought I had, and I want to throw it out there that before we continue, what about the funding that Tree Fresno has already committed in the boundary through these other projects? That could be our foundational match, could it, Aaron?
Yeah, that can be, yeah, since the SERP was signed, adopted, I mean, what they've spent in the community can be used as a potential match here already. So.
Yeah, so let's get some numbers from Mona.
That doesn't take away the fact that we can make it. We
Right.
can say, we will recommend. So this committee recommends putting the $1 million, and that we can already mention what Tree Fresno has,
Right.
and to for the other part. But I see Lisa and Genevieve. So maybe Genevieve, because she hasn't spoken first. You're on it.
Thanks, trying to unmute. Can y'all hear me? Okay. I had a quick question, just looking at the document. So 25% of the funds are for administration by the air district. Was that it?
No.
No.
This is still to be decided, but that would be part of the criteria that this subcommittee would develop for the RFP, how you would choose a contractor to do the job.
Okay. I thought I had read in the document that no funding was allowed for like overhead costs of the organization or for maintenance of the project. Was that true? Is that true?
Oh, no, there's actually, there could be costs in there that include the overall, the continued maintenance of it to make sure, like a tree dies, they could go over, do another tree, that would be part of it.
Okay, so continued maintenance of the project is part of.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great to hear. Okay, well, I was just checking there. Thank you. But I just wanted to say what I said in the chat was that I agree with Ivanka and Nayamin that perhaps just removing the matching funding language so that it doesn't become a barrier to progress, while with the intent of pursuing matching funding. But I would hate to see everything get stalled because of we're waiting on this or we're waiting on that, and the community, the district, CARB, the legislature all wants to see AB 617 work, and we want to see real results. And I think removing barriers to moving forward will be really beneficial for community health and for the health of the program, so that we can show it's a success. But those are my 2 cents. Thanks.
Excuse me, I just also want to bring up real quick, if we have to be very careful about making sure that the grant process is open to everyone. And if Tree Fresno already has stuff in the pipeline, they're also going to have to be competitive with anybody else that applies. And it should not be a given that they're going to get the grant, because once you do that, the question then becomes, are we violating any sort of law?
No, it would be open. That's a goal. It would be open. I mean, obviously they have the most experience, but it would be open to an organization that could do the work.
All right, but I just want us to be very mindful of that. That's all. Thank you.
Yep. But I mean, in all honesty, I mean, they're probably the best suited for it, but you never know. We could get a different organization that can step up and do it too. We don't know until you put it out there.
Can we discuss the other issue that Lisa mentioned and that I think is important too? So right now, the project description that the Air District prepared says only organizations, companies, cities, So basically it's excluding individuals. Is that something that we can consider and discuss as an option for the urban greening strategy?
Let me reread that. I want to see it. See exactly where it says that.
I have a question about that, Naomi. I don't, of course, I don't want any exclusions if there's an opportunity for an individual to match what the description of vegetative barriers are. But this brings me back to the same question of where we started in the very beginning when we talked about vegetatives being separate than urban greening. And urban greening would, like, without having, I just feel like I'm at a space where I need to discuss both at the same time because of that question of of residents being excluded. So where, if it's not in vegetative barriers, then is that because we're looking at residents as being the impact around their house and on their street? And would those type of projects be addressed in an urban greening, which we don't really have completely off the ground yet either? So I'm not in any way trying to make a recommendation, because I'm really trying to understand, if you are excluding residents out of vegetative barriers measure, then it has to be seen in urban greening, right? Like, where does that space arise that communities, residents, they've lost their city trees, the city does not replace those trees, and now they have bare bone streets in front of them, right? So if they can't plant on the sidewalk, then this program should be the program that allows them to plant the trees inside their own yard. If the city can't do what they should have been doing for these communities to begin with. So any thoughts on what I just said? It really is like a question of, if there's that exclusion, yeah, if it, where it allows for direct impact and direct improvement for the resident.
I can respond to that. In the plan, in the on the second page, you know, participant requirements. You know, A talks about city, county, special district, nonprofit, tribal government, public agency. B states, be the owner of the land or have authority from the owner of the land where the vegetative barrier urban green project will be planted. So it basically covers both already.
No, I don't think so, because the way I interpret, and you know, I'm not an attorney, but the way I interpret these two things together is that you have to meet fall within the categories mentioned, or any of the things mentioned on number one. So you have to be a city, a county special district, da, 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 da.
You have to be all of them.
And you have to be the owner. I see it as two different things. And there's so my question is, can we add here in you know, A, that you can be and obviously you're not going to be expecting an individual that wants to plant trees in front of her in their street, for example, Isabel or Estela, to build a vegetative barrier, but maybe just trees that are going to bring more shade and improve their neighborhoods in particular. So I don't know, but maybe adding the word individual is not going to be the solution. We might need to discuss this more, but that's the way that these two things are worded. It doesn't assume that you as an individual, you are eligible.
And I think also, right now in the SERP, there's not money for urban green right now. Is that correct? In the SERP at this point in time?
And that's
Right.
the other solution that we need to discuss, because again, that SERP and that recommendation of not putting money was not done by us, all the steering committee.
That's correct, Aaron. It's got $1 million in vegetative barriers, and the
Yeah.
language is just, you know, a funding match in urban greening.
And again, that was not something that the steering committee recommended. So that we're trying to resolve that problem that was done by not by us. I'm trying to meet, you know, fill that gap.
So what you guys are saying is there's $1 million in vegetative barriers that doesn't have to have a match, and that's all city, county, and nonprofits. So they get a free ride and they don't have to have a match. But urban greening, mom and dad, mom and pop, and aunts and uncles and stuff who just want a simple tree or a couple of trees in the front yard have to come up with a match in a poor neighborhood. Does anybody see anything wrong with that? I think when we do urban greening,
Well,
it should be a zero match.
It you know, that is the thing that we know, first and foremost, I think that the whole confusion is that we are lumping the two strategies that were separated into one project. Because you're right, the way a little bit, just a slight correction in what you described, Lisa. So the way that is the SERP is established or was established was there is a recommendation for $1 million for vegetative barriers, but that's where they're asking for the match. You first need to find a match, and when you get the match, then the Air District puts in that $1 million. And then although there was the urban greening strategy, there was no money recommended for that strategy. So we need to go out and look for any penny that is available because there's no money there. And that's what I'm saying. We need to change that because we did not recommend that. That didn't come from the steering committee.
And this brings us right back to our other conversations of the budget and the allocation of funding for these measures, right? So the cart before the horse, as you said earlier, is at play again. We don't have those amounts agreed upon yet, and we're trying to move forward on one plan without those pieces solidified. And
so I think that we need a couple of things. For one, we need a recommendation, us, because we're not the steering committee. We just recommend, and then the steering committee that meets every month has to, you know, discuss it and vote it. So I think that the first one, in my opinion, is for the vegetative barriers is taking out the matching, so that, you know, we put the 1 million and that we switch the language so it says that yes, we're going to look for a match, but it doesn't have to be upfront, so that we first put the match and then we put the million. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we as a steering committee, we can recommend the steering committee to take a vote on saying there was no money allocated for urban greening. We're going to put money. If we're not going to fund the locomotive, let's put at least half of the money that was for locomotives for this. That's the way I see that what we could present as a recommendation to the full steering committee.
I agree with that.
I agree.
Question, I might be reading. The way this is worded, it puts the vegetative barrier and the urban greening together. Is that million for both?
That is the confusion, Janet, that in the proposal that the Air District created, They're lumped the two. But if you go to the SERP, they are separate and they didn't put any money recommended for urban greening. Erin, could you address Janet's question?
Yes, they were lumped together. I think as one project, I think trying to avoid having an ARB to do approve two plans. And the goal is to basically use this, and you're right, it might have to be tweaked a little bit here. Maybe just looking at the eligibility requirement might be a word. I think might change the whole thing. Is to take one plan and use it for both, whatever came in, right? That's truly the goal of it. So I think it could be worded, maybe a word here or there, take it out, to put it in to accommodate that, I think. And the eligibility, because I think once you do that, I think it should be okay.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then we would say the recommendation is that we change the wording so we can consider the two SERP strategies into one plan, but that we are going to recommend two things. One, that we don't put that as a precondition, having the match first. So we put the million, and then we will look for other funding, of course.
Right.
But also that we augment that million, because we started with a big mistake of not putting any money in the urban greening strategy. So I think we need to also include that as a part of the recommendation.
I second that. And if it can be a motion, I mean, and to add, if we are combining the two, then adding in individuals as eligible applicants, those three parts, I would second that motion and would like to bring it to a vote among the subcommittee.
I agree with that amendment. So I make that motion of recommending to the full steering committee that we combine the two, augment without asking for the match, augmenting more funding so we have also for urban greening, and that we include individuals as eligible for urban greening projects.
How would we like to vote? Thumbs up and have a air district member take down the vote?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Or really, if we're just looking for those that wouldn't want to do it, are there any opposed? I think, yeah, Genevieve, I see Kim, Estella, Naimeen. I already saw that Bonka's earlier, Janet. Yeah, I think you're all in agreement. Yesenia.
I'm
Lisa?
definitely in agreement. I can't
Okay.
find the thumbs up.
Yeah, just looking for yours, Lisa. Okay, then we have the will of this group, no problem. What else is still on our agenda?
Well, can I ask a question, I guess, about maybe just like a mechanism, I guess, one step down, I guess, from on the urban greening side of it, we'll say, if wherever the regular committee decides how that works out, I'm not going to get into that now because I don't make that decision, but if you have individual landowners that want a tree in their yard or wherever they want it, so the mechanism to do that, would the individual owner be responsible for that tree for 10 years to make sure that it's watered, make sure if it dies, they get a new one? Would you have a contractor be responsible for that? If something dies, they have to replant it. So I'm talking about the mechanism 4 years from now. If they wanted it planted and it fell down, it died, because it does go to the next step. When you start doing things like that, it does change some. So I think we need to think about that as well, as how that mechanism would work to adhere. If you spent the money on a tree and it does die, you want to replant it, stuff like that. I'm getting that.
I
Just
think
from a higher level.
I think and probably we could hear, unfortunately monolith, but I think that if we are going to be asking for the other entities, the schools or whomever, to be responsible for maintaining and ensuring that the trees are going to be taken care of and so on and so forth. So I think that we, I personally feel that we should be asking for the same from individual homeowner.
Yeah, I've actually done some research and found really cool examples of kind of agreements between cities and homeowners, where the city provides the trees and the homeowners agree to provide the water to it. And I can follow up to this committee with those examples. But one interesting thing I'd like to bring up is if the homeowner is actually not a homeowner, but a renter, how would a project like this still apply? Or would it have to be the landowner?
It would have to be the landowner. You'd have to be the
Okay.
landowner, not the renter.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, theoretically, they have the right to the land, not the, the renter.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're on the same page there, because you really get down to nitty gritty there. You talk about individual people and this and that. How would you do the mechanism? You don't, and you don't want to do, 100 separate contracts with individual homeowners. You want to have one contract with an organization that would do it, and they would have like MOUs that would get attached to the contract, maybe, or I don't know. Just kind of thinking out loud here.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea.
But there is just, when you get into that nitty gritty stuff, you get these crazy things that pop up. Like, ooh, can't think of that. And that's just kind of what we deal with from that standpoint of the grants we do, is that things you never thought of pop up. You're like, oh, wow, okay, that's how. Oh, okay, we'll have to figure that one out. So
What if the property changed ownership? I mean, all of those things.
Yeah, exactly. Things pop up. You transfer this, you transfer that. It just things happen. Life happens.
You guys,
right?
it's not that hard. It really is.
So
not
it just, you just come to this.
You know what? And that,
It's
I
too
think
hard. We just have to
that
do it.
is, Aaron, to your point about not discussing or putting into the proposal the criteria. I think that that's something that we need to take time to discuss and include in the contract. But yeah, you're right. I think it's important to guarantee that public funding is, used in the best way possible.
Yeah, now that's where I come from, is we're stewards of the money, and we got to make sure it's spent correctly.
So,
But
I mean,
also,
oh,
when
go
you
ahead.
have a land transfer, all it's going to take you is maybe 2 or 3 lines in a standard MOU that
acknowledge it.
to acknowledge it, and that it is part of the landscape and it's part of a transfer. So whoever buys it also understands they're also accepting the terms and condition of the MOU, and that becomes part of their agreement when they buy the property.
So on our list of to-dos for sure is vetting these like, we need a working meeting to, I mean, with probably this is the only thing on the agenda. All of these various little rabbit holes. Yeah.
I think once we get the okay and the blessing from the rest of the committee, and with these recommendations, then we can, and then, as we know, we already the CARB already gave some feedback. You guys submit a second revision, and then in the meantime we start going into the details of the ranking and the contract and all those things. Yeah, and
I think for us, my action item is the actual measure itself. Is, like I said, change a couple words, really, for eligibility for a lot of individuals. I think that should cover it.
That's good. Yesenia, what do we have next? Because we have 11 minutes left.
All right, so next on the agenda is future opportunities, or no, actually it's community outreach using the tree mapping tool. And we have had some more input with the blue icon on the tree mapping tool for Vegetative Barrier Committee. And if you guys have seen it, there's about 3 more, and we're still looking for more. But one of them,
screen.
Okay, thank you.
I pulled it up. Oops. Can you see it?
Yes.
Cool. So I don't have my little tool on, but these blue ones are new, you're saying?
Yes, and if you could click the one that's on Cedar there.
Right here? Yep.
Yes, thank you. So it says there that the intersection and streets surrounding Butler and Cedar are a good location for tree plantings. Community member Isabel Vargas had mentioned that there was no shade there at the bus stop, and we have been looking at that location for future opportunities for tree planting there. So, and then there's also those other 2, and we would like to see more in the future, if you guys.
And so I think that what we would like to get support from all of you is on knowing about opportunities where Yesenia and other volunteers can go and get feedback. So for example, Lilia told us about this event that happened last week. So Yesenia went. So we want to know about these events that are going on in the community, either in schools or you know, other public venues, so we can take the mapping tool and get more feedback.
Oh, awesome. So this came from talking, well, Isabel did one, but talking at a cool, at a meeting, at an event.
Mm-hmm. So we just wanted to show you that and get your feedback. I know that many of you, BHC, Leadership Council and others are always organizing things in the community, or you know, Stella and Isabel are also very active in their children's schools. So let us know, because you know, let's get more feedback. And just as a quick update, so CCJN applied to get a couple of fellows during the summer, and we're going to be coordinating with youth. So we're going to be doing this more intensive feedback, getting feedback from these neighborhoods, so we can get more. That's going to be populated way more, but in the meantime, please let us know other places where Yesenia can go.
Excellent.
Hi, my question is, what is the Air District's marketing plan for the urban greening, particularly the mom and dad? I mean, we can hit people here and there, but you know, are you going to send out postcards to everybody in the community? I mean,
well, we're not quite there.
There's nothing
yet.
like
we once we define the, you know, the parameters of who we want to hit and sort of those details that we discussed, that'll be our next step.
And I think it comes from all of us, Lisa. I think I wouldn't just ask their district what they will do. I will start with a list of ideas what we want them to do. So we start putting in that list.
Because trust me, if you sent me a postcard and said free trees and gave little bullet points of what I needed to do, I would show up for a free tree.
That's the intent. And talking about trees, Yesenia, I think the last agenda item was the update, right?
Yeah, so the update for last month on April 24th, CCJN, Tree Fresno, and Beautify Fresno have collaborated on a tree planting project at Green Valley Recycling. It was a part 2 event, and we had planted 150 trees that day, and afterwards there was also a community cleanup where 10,000 pounds of trash was picked up. And so that's an update for last month's tree planting project.
That's cool.
And obviously, that is an example, right, of where someone was mentioning, oh, well, Tree Fresno already has resources. Well, yes, and we're, you know, even we're not sitting down waiting for these projects to be approved, or even the proposal to be ready. You know, Janet was there. We were there with volunteers. The trees came from a high-speed rail money, and then a lot of community groups volunteer, and we planted the trees. So, and this is a vegetative barrier in an AB 617 neighborhood.
Right.
So that's exactly the example of the things we need to be doing. And I know Janet has some ideas, so she's very quiet, but I would like her to share.
You're calling me out. So while Naomi and I were at the tree planting and doing some other things, I did volunteer to buy some trees for the mom and pops. But I very much wanted Tree Fresno, because I know Mona, to let us know the correct trees, because that's not my forte. So I would limit it to $500, but I would buy the trees, and then we coordinate the planting with volunteers for the mom and pops and just move forward with it, because it is hard for a mom and pop. The grants, you know, it's going to take what, a year? So Naomi and I talked, and it's like, let's just move on some of this. We really don't need to wait for some of the other stuff. We just need some people to come forward with the resources. So And just so
Yeah.
you know, this weekend, Carts is having a free dump event for City of Fresno residents.
Free dump?
Free. You bring your City of Fresno utility bill and a driver's license ID that matches.
And you
Show it
can
to Kate,
dump
I
a
will
truck
be there. And it is a free collection event for, we will take appliances. We will not take any household hazardous waste. So no TVs, no electronics, no herbicides, pesticides, none of that. But we are with the goal of cleaning up the areas. So we are doing that. So I will be there from 5 a.m. to 4. It is open from 6 a.m. to 3. Don't hurt me.
Yeah, and we can replace all this dumping with beautiful trees that are gonna bring shade and benefit to the community rather than that. And then one other thing I just want to bring up for this committee, but also, question for the air district. So I remember that maybe a month ago, Yesenia attended a workshop that they were giving about grant opportunities that are coming up in June for funding for trees. So I think that, Yesenia, you can explain a little bit more about that, but I was thinking, definitely it would be great for the air district to work on a proposal like that to start bringing those kind of funds that match the intent of these strategies. So who do we send the link of the grant opportunities to?
To me and Aaron. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Take a look.
Perfect. And we can send it to the whole committee too, because I know that maybe each organization might want to apply for your own trees. So I will send it over. Oh, it's already, she saw on top of things. She put it in the chat. So
yeah, I just linked it in the chat there.
You're so good.
Awesome. So is there anything else, Yesenia?
That was actually it for our agenda today. We made it.
Good job, Yesenia.
Okay, so we need a volunteer. Who wants to present our recommendation to the steering committee our next monthly meeting?
Not everyone at once.
Come on, you guys, don't be shy.
So the recommendations are that we combine the vegetative barrier and the urban greening, and that the $1 million is upfront. We find the matching later.
Mm-hmm. And that we amend funding. We didn't give up an amount, but we recommend increasing funding because there was no funding allocated to the urban greening.
So that's my question, kind of. If we're combining the two in the SERP, can they be combined so that the wording becomes, it's now $1 million for both? So we can look at them together. And that's more of a question to Aaron. I don't know how that would work. I'm willing to present it, but I need to understand some of that better.
Well, we wrote it in a way because I think the urban greening one we have a match. It's written as we would match something that comes up, right? Or something. I got to reread it, but my brain's, I have to read it right now. But we wrote it in a way to cover if we were to do that. We're trying to write this in a way we cover both. Because the true intent was to cover both if they were to happen. Obviously, the vegetative barriers has the funding in there in the SERP, so that would be obviously probably the first up, I guess. But as far as the money goes, the urban greening, that's not for me to decide. That's a bigger process through the subcommittee, through the district, through ARB, through how that process works. I'm not really sure how it works, because I don't think anybody's moved money around.
I've done it yet.
Yeah. So it's just a bigger process.
We're gonna be innovative, Janet. We're gonna do it first.
Right.
So
she's probably right.
So Janet,
it just hasn't been done. So I don't know the mechanism at this point in time. How
Brian, is it easy to move money around? Just say yes, please.
Carbs
so I
weigh
wasn't
in.
talking.
Put them on blast, Brian.
Question. I wasn't talking actually moving money around. I was talking take that and combine the two.
Right.
under
So,
one pot of money.
For clarity, there's UG1, the urban greening measure, that just says, hey, we like the concept, we support the concept. If funding is available out there that we can identify, we'll put money toward it and match it. The vegetative barrier concept also says you have to match, as Naimeen pointed out, but it already upfront loads the $1 million in there. We've committed $1 million that should be matched. And they're separate cert measures. The program plan that got packaged up nice and pretty and submitted to CARB, that's now been revised once, that is where the two got combined together and what Aaron's referring to.
And
We
just
put
trying to make it
together-
easier, just trying to make it easier. That way you don't have to go back later and do it again, essentially. So we're trying to make it so it will work for both is what we're really trying to do to avoid having to wait every year
So
to approve it.
ultimately, Janet, more than likely, depending on what happens, as Aaron says, neither of us know how that shakes out. When we go back and have this conversation about where the funding comes from and how it's done, more than likely, yeah, you've combined them together and work in tandem. It could probably be done.
Okay, because
I
that
think
would
it'd
be
be
my
two
preferred
separate
method.
RFPs. It'd be two separate RFP mechanisms. I believe it would have to be. But yeah, the idea would be funneled to this one plan.
Okay, because that seems to me easier rather than trying to move money around is to combine those two.
Just, and yeah, cover it all with the, yeah. Probably originally they should have been combined in hindsight, now that we have done a couple of SERPs and know what we're up to.
So I can present it if you want.
Brian, you managed to stay quiet. I was still gonna lock you in here.
Who me?
Yeah, you.
He's doing better than me
Oh,
this
yeah, I
evening.
wasn't sure. So yeah, the way the incentives work is there's tons of latitude to decide on funding amounts. So I mean, CARB does not dictate how incentive funds are allocated at the district or community level. You know, that's
Hey, guys, so we just say, let's be firm. Let's just say, we want the $1 million from the locomotive to the urban greening. They can push back later and say, no, but we need to be bold. We need to say what we want. All in favor, put your thumbs up.
Looks like they're in agreement with you.
Okay.
And we are also out of time. I'm so sorry. Paying attention to time. Yes, there's Eric, Genevieve, Estella, Kimberly, Lisa, Ivanka. That's everyone. Oh, Yesenia too. Good job, team. You are in agreement.
Okay, well, I guess we are ready to adjourn.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Also, Eric, call me. You need to send me your